Hello, welcome to the Dollar Dreams podcast. The podcast is about sharing the stories of first generation immigrants who has moved from other countries for better life, for better opportunities, well, and also to share information. My first guest today in this podcast is Saket Mundra. Saket is an portfolio manager, but I will let him talk about this himself because I don't know much about it. Saket, do you want to tell what do you do currently?
I'm an investor. I manage equity funds for uh, a number of high net worth clients. Mostly, what happens is when people want their wealth to be managed, we have people in our offices who service them, come up with a financial plan for them. Then all those funds are combined. And once those funds are combined, um, for the US markets, I'm the one who's investing those funds.
And which company do you work for currently?
I work with Canadian Western Bank
And
Wealth.
they're one of the biggest investment banker
No,
or no?
they're one of the largest. They're one of the large six banks in the country, and soon to be acquired by National Bank. So technically, I'm working with Canadian Western Bank as of now, but just in a few days, uh, sometime in February, we'll be working for National Bank of Canada.
So Saket is also a friend, and we are neighbors. So I know a little bit of his story. And when did you move to Canada? How long ago was that?
Moved in 2011 June.
2011 June. And was that for study?
Yes, I moved here to pursue MBA in 2011. Yeah.
And what is your background? Did you do engineering or like what is your background in education and where are you from? India? Like you are
Yeah.
from India, and yeah, what's your background?
So I grew up in Delhi and I screwed up during my plus two. And since then, studied engineering, worked in, just like most Indian engineers of my age, worked in Tata Consultancy Services for 2 years. However, during the first year, I realized this is not for me. And I'd switched my career prior to coming to Canada. So when I came to Canada to pursue my MBA, I already knew that only going to do investing. So it was not a career switch for me.
And so you said you screwed up. What happened?
In India, the way things work is if you don't score grades, you don't get into a good college. If you don't get into a good college, at least at that time, things have changed much now. But when I was growing up, things were like if you didn't get into a good college, that meant you would not, uh, you didn't know what would happen with your career.
So so you mentioned that you worked in TCS for 2 years, and then did you moved into a different profession. What was it, and what made you?
So I was in TCS and I was doing software engineering, and maybe specific part was requirements gathering and designing, which was just understanding from clients what kind of software they want, why, understanding their business process. However, I didn't enjoy that process or the whole process of creating a software for people much. I realized it was not for me, and but at the same time, as a young Indian kid during 2005, you can realize that when you start earning 20,000 rupees a month, suddenly you are king of the world. And uh, this was my first income in India, and I'd started investing, thinking that that's the easiest way to make more money. India was going through and most emerging markets were going through a bull market back then, 2005, 2007. When I invested for the first time, I lost money. And I realized that probably there's more to it than just looking at on TV and buying a stock, or hearing somebody give a tip and buying a stock. And that's what prompted me into learning on my own how to invest and why. And when I started doing that, that really uh, that I enjoyed that process. It was a process of self-discovery. It was a process of understanding everything about a business and learning new things, and I enjoyed that. So that is what led me to switch my career. Uh, I was very lucky uh, because I didn't know many things about financial markets back then. However, I was lucky. I had watched, and this became true in my life actually. I'd watched a movie called Pursuit of Happiness back then, and in
And that
that,
was in college or like after college?
it was during my days in TCS. So what happened
Okay.
one day once when I really got frustrated working at TCS, I called up my dad and I said I'm going to resign, and he said, "Yeah, well, for sure you can resign and come back, but how do you know the next thing you do is not going to be the thing that you enjoy or turn out to be similar as you have done with engineering?" And that got me thinking. Simultaneously, like when you're living, you're doing things, you're reading books, and I happened to watch that movie Pursuit of Happiness at that time. I think it was released at that time also. I'm not sure, but that's when I watched it. And what I realized after watching that movie, or that was a turning point for me, because some of the things in that movie I just copied. And there's a scene in the movie where uh, the guy goes on, and if any of you have watched that movie or
Yeah.
haven't watched, people should. It's one of the best inspirational movies and true stories that you can find.
Hmm.
Underdog story. And he is going through a list. So this guy, who was not very successful in what he was doing, um, finds an internship somehow, lands up at an internship at a on the Wall Street, and he's going through a list of clients, and based on what he would do during those 3 months and how many clients he would bring, he would either get a job, permanent job or not, which would determine whether this guy could raise his son or not. So what he most people start doing is they go through the list one by one and they look for smaller accounts, but eventually after getting fed up, this guy does exactly opposite of what he was told, so he starts at the top.
So
And
he's already into investment at that point. He's looking for big clients in this
he's
case.
just an intern who was
Intern.
giving a list of clients, and he was instructed, or most interns were instructed, that start from the smaller account, then go to the largest account.
Okay.
And every time he did call a smaller account, because he had no background, nothing, he just received no, 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 no. And he got so fed up, so he said, I'm going to just go at the top of the list. So, so that I just copied. I don't know why. I have no rhyme or reason. So I just started calling. That gave me an idea that HDFC Bank, probably in India, which is a big bank and uh, had clients, or any known names, right? Like JP Morgan or stuff, probably they won't hire me. So I said I'm going to download the list and just start cold calling no name firms. And when I did that, I started at the bottom of the list again. Rather than starting from A, alphabet A, I did start from Z. And there was this firm called VCAM, which I had no clue. I couldn't find them on Google. So if you can't find anything on Google, means probably nobody knows them. And I cold called them, and they were gracious enough to give me an interview. Somehow I passed. And what happened was, it turned out that it was an emerging market hedge fund, which was run by one of the managing directors of Morgan Stanley in New York back then,
So this is when
2007,
you in India
in
and you were
India.
looking to switch careers.
Yeah, yeah. So this was without any CFA, anything. This was just that I learned some things on my own, and I told them that give me a shot, and somehow I landed up that job, and that was my first job in finance. And
And
when
how long did you work in finance in India?
approximately 3 years. So this was 1 year with this fund, but then 2008 happened, and the fund had to shut down. And after that, I landed up a role in a private equity firm, which was back then one of the few firms in India. Right now, India has a lot of venture capital and private equity funds. Back in 2008, probably there were 15, 20, or maybe 100 firms.
Mhm.
And again, lucky enough, I ended up working with that private equity fund for 2 years. It was one of the largest, at that time, one of the largest healthcare funds in India. Uh, and yeah, so in total, approximately 3 years in India on finance. And during that time, just to maybe round it out, those 3 years were enough for me to know that this is what I want to do. So the
And was it because there was lots of money to be made? Was it fun? Was it combination of both? And you also had felt like you had like a talent for it. All of those.
money was never a thing. Money, and it has not been in my career. I just wanted to be happy, and I've never thought I was not. I was paid adequately, but it wasn't that I was making big money at that time. I was a nobody, and I just enjoyed the process of researching and knowing stories about different companies, different people. That was my high, and that has been my high, and is still my high. Uh, and money just happened, or whatever has happened because of that. So I've never chased money. I've never quoted money to people that this is how much I want in my salary. Uh, it's just happened. And from a talent perspective, what I have learned, at least in this industry, or what I do is, it's more technical skills anybody can learn. For
Mm-hmm.
example, to know how to build a model in Excel or how to do something, those things anybody can learn. But just like everything in life, like when if you're cooking something, let's say if you're making a dal at home, how do you make a dal uh, can turn out to be, depending on how much attention you pay to it, how much time you're willing to put into it. Like there are days when somebody cooks a dal in 15 minutes and it's okay, yeah, it's eatable. But then there are days when you have time and you really want to indulge and you spend 3 hours in making a dal, and the taste is different. The
Right.
recipe is the same, the taste is different. So that's what I think in any profession, and including this one, is you got to know what works for you. There are many ways to make money in the markets. You have
So,
to understand that. Yeah.
so what made you decide when you were doing this job? And I'm assuming you were getting paid better than you were paid in TCS.
Yeah, much better. Yeah.
Much better, right? So, what made you decide that okay, I want to pursue this and I want to do a master's or like do further education?
So a few things actually, was never my plan to do an MBA, but having done the research in the business, what I'd learned is this industry works on designations. So if you had to go, it's like a key to a lock. So if you had
Mm-hmm.
to reach a certain level,
Mm-hmm.
you need a certain designation. But more importantly than that, my boss in the private equity firm, who was a visiting faculty at London Business School, he became a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And his story was very similar, or maybe even better than mine. He was a doctor by profession and training, who was practicing medicine, and then he turned into a venture capitalist and a private equity guy. And he worked at, probably at that time, one of the best firms in the world. And then from there, he ended up being a visiting faculty in London Business School, which is one of the best schools teaching private equity courses. So he became my mentor, and he said, I see a lot of similarities in you. So if you want to grow further, you need to go out of India. You need to see the world. You need to see things, how businesses are run there, and broaden your horizon. And that led me to kind of take a decision that, okay, this is what uh, maybe it's worth pursuing. I've had 3 years in the career, and uh, started to think about doing an MBA thereafter.
And did you apply to Canadian universities, US universities, and like what made you like choose Toronto? Because I know you
Yeah.
studied in Toronto.
So I applied to, so when you decide on a business school, if that's the route you want to do, an MBA, and maybe MBA is not as relevant today. The
Mm-hmm.
world has changed, but
Mm-hmm.
back then it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And when you decide an MBA, at least my view was, there are two kinds of people who go to an MBA school. People who want to use MBA as a springboard to move ahead in their existing careers, or people who want to switch careers. I was the one who wanted to just, I knew what I wanted to do and I didn't want to switch my career.
Mm-hmm.
So then it became an easy choice that if you wanted to do, just do investing, what are the financial hubs in the world? So there are a few of them: London, New York, Toronto, Singapore, maybe Hong Kong now. and I wanted to not do it in Asia. So London became a choice, Colombia became a choice, and Toronto was the other choice.
Hmm.
And then between those three, I got into University of Toronto. One of the reasons for Toronto actually was that after having switched my career successfully, I had that confidence that if I had time, I would be able to do something within that country. And if, because the aim was to get exposure into businesses in that region, the plan was never to do MBA and just simply return in 1 year or 2 years.
Hmm.
The plan was to work for a few years and then go back to India, hopefully, if I wanted to. And
So when you moved here, you wanted to go back at some point.
yeah, yeah. The plan was to actually go back after I paid my loan, after I had gained my whatever experience I wanted to gain.
And
And
you took loan to come do the MBA here.
yes, yes, I did. I did take. My parents helped. My parents helped a lot. I was already married when I did my MBA, so I was not worried about day-to-day expenses because my wife was working at
Hmm.
that time, and that is a big support. Similarly, my parents helped on my tuition, and but I did take a loan, uh, and then we paid that down. Uh, so
And how many years were you in Toronto? So I
2 years.
2 years when you
Yeah,
were working, and then you moved to
Cal.
Calgary, or you straight away moved to Calgary?
No, so the way it worked is even before my MBA actually from India, and that's where I think most people today, even today, uh, forget that cold calling works. So even before my MBA, I had reached out to firms here and asked them that before starting my MBA if I could do a free volunteering internship. And so for 3 months, I did an internship in Montreal with what was one of the few venture capital firms in this country
And
back
that
then.
was before you got admitted.
Yeah, before my MBA. Yeah, it was voluntary. Yeah, like I didn't get paid for it, but I just wanted to know what it was working, what it was like working here in this country, and just start get a head start, because when you have something on your resume, you have an experience, gives you a head start. So I was lucky enough. I stayed in Montreal for 3 months, did that internship. Then during my MBA, I was we have an internship for 3 4 months, which is where I was again lucky to be in selected, and I got my internship at a firm called More Investment Management,
Hmm.
which is one of the best managers in the world, and they are based out of Calgary. So that's how I ended up in Calgary for 4 months. And finally, after my MBA 2013, when whatever jobs were there for my role, I applied, and this small firm in Calgary where I worked and started was here, and that's how I ended up being in Calgary.
And you have been in Calgary for how many years now?
12, almost 12. So we started in July 2013, and yeah, since then.
Oh, okay. We moved 1 year before you to Calgary, so 13 years for us. Um, so in the world right now, like with the changing market with AI,
Hmm.
with robo advisors, uh, Wealth Simple, and all that, what is do you see the role of portfolio managers or investment gurus or like this field still being relevant? Do you think the number of people will reduce? Like, how will it impact? Because if my understanding is correct of the AI, they could do that deep research and provide you with insights, and they could, maybe I'm wrong, but they could do mostly the analysis part and provide you with their suggestions. Do you think this profession is still going to be relevant for upcoming youth or for people who wants to follow that footprint, who are interested in investment and who wants to do an MBA or who wants to work in these investment firms?
I think the answer, it depends. There will be always impact of any new technology, as has been the case in every industry, right? Like when there were no computers and no Excel, and when Excel came about, there was an impact.
Right.
Okay, and similarly, like 10, 20 years ago, people said we'll never read paper books anymore, but we still read books in paper. So I don't know how AI would evolve or other technologies, not just AI, would evolve. But what I do know is one of the best funds or most successful funds in the markets have been Renaissance, and they were always a quant fund. So they were always using computer and algorithm
Hmm.
to do it. And in spite of them, there have been other ways of making money, and people like me have survived. So I hope, but is
So
it?
you're saying that the Renaissance firm, they are using computers and algorithms to do their investments, and
Yeah,
they are highly successful.
yeah.
But there's place for other players
There's
as well.
always, so in the markets you can make money many different ways, and you just have to. So the way I think about it is, or the way I explain it to people is that if you have to go from, let's say, Calgary to Toronto, you can use an airplane, you can drive, you can probably go through US driving. There are many routes, right? You still reach Toronto, but the choice is whether you go directly through an airplane, whether you hop, or whether you take your car and drive. So there are many ways, and there'll be place, in my opinion, for a lot of people. Will the competition get harder? Probably yes. Will it be? But that's true anyways in my profession, because you don't need competition. You just, if you're not good enough, you can't survive, because if you're not making people money
Right.
within few years, you're not in the business.
Yeah.
So
So, and what was your MBA in finance or
my MBA was in investment management.
investment management? Okay. So, and if people want to pursue this path, what do they need to do today? Do you know, like if somebody is coming from India or anywhere else and they want to get into investment banking, what do they need to do?
I So investment banking is slightly different than investment management, but
Investment management,
yeah,
then,
but
sorry.
in investment management, they, for me, it's been my passion. So I don't know, and I don't know if I'm equipped to give advice, but what I would do is, I would say that you have to know why do you want to do this yourself. It's not just like any job, right? Like, even people think coding is easy. Good coding is not easy.
Right.
I've known that myself, having been there. Or people think you can write easy code, or everything is or making a good website. If you know a basic HTML, you can make a good page. But that's not truly really true. Uh, there are design elements. There are many other things about a basic static page that you need to do. So for somebody who wants to do this, they have to be really passionate about it, and they need to understand that, do they have the appetite for it? Because I'll give you an example. Imagine, like, imagine your dad gave you $100 and he said invest in a stock, or you have invested that money for him in the stock, and honest truth is, you don't know what will happen tomorrow. And let's say for some reason a crisis like 2008 happened, and it's down 50%.
Hmm.
The markets are down by 50%. So suddenly, in a matter of days, you're down. Do you have the stomach to take that? And can you look your dad in the eye and tell him that, don't worry, everything will be fine at that time? And do you have the courage, actually, and conviction to actually put more money to work at that time? Because those are the best times to invest. And so people think it's just a technical skill that is important in this business. I get paid, actually, to just take the pain when most other people can't.
Hmm.
So in 2008, it's painful, but I would put my emotions aside and say, this is the time to invest.
Right.
And that's where that's where I earn my keep, versus anybody else. Anybody can do a DCF, anybody can research a company, but it's the behavioral side of the business that is very important, which most people don't understand. Because when you lose your hard-earned money, even 10%, it most people cannot take that psychologically.
That's true. So, would you say that that is the hardest part of your job, or like what are some of the difficult parts of your job?
The path I'm on, and I'll just quote Warren Buffett and Munger, because they, at least for people like me, they have been the most important or most influential people in our careers, in our generation, and prior generations, in my opinion, many more generations to come. They've always said that you don't need to be the most intelligent to be successful in stock market investing or making money here. You just need to be more emotionally intelligent. So I think having that emotional intelligence, having humility when you're wrong, because you will be wrong. Most the best people in this business, they are wrong almost 40, 50, like 40, 45% of the time. So you're only right many out of the 10 bets you take, you probably are right 5 to 6 times.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have the humility to take it, and then also understand, like, how do you distinguish, because you follow the similar process in finding those 10 companies, but how do you know that, okay, this is the time I'm wrong and these are the times I'm right? If you can't do that, then yeah, it's going to be hard.
Um, so we have a lot of new immigrants and people coming to Canada, and they have very tight finances.
Hmm.
And we have all these financial um, instruments, uh, for lack of better words, like TFSA, RSP, and all the other things available. Like, what would be your advice to them when they come here? Because what I see is that financial literacy is one of the most important thing for everybody. And how do you handle your money and your emotions towards money? And that is not taught to anyone, kids, adults alike. um, so they don't know how to do that. They what would be your advice, like? And when I'm asking for advice, I'm not asking for financial advice. It's more like, what are the resources, how can they educate themselves, what are the resources they should look for? And this advice is, like, what would be the advice for somebody who's new coming to Canada, and what would be your advice to, like, student or somebody who is getting into workforce?
So I don't know if I'm completely equipped to answer that, but uh, one advice is understand it's important. Like it
Hmm.
starts there. Realize that it is important, because if you don't plan it, then it will plan your life,
Right.
right? If you don't pay attention to it, and by the time you're 40 or by the time you're 45, you would be struggling, or unless you get lucky in a very high paying job or something, finances would dictate how you live your life eventually. So it's better to realize that, okay, number one, start, it's very important. That realization should be there. Second is start early. Okay, the earlier you do it, the better it is. Third, what has helped me, for example, is exactly knowing my priorities in life. Okay, so different people have different priorities. Some people would like uh, always spend less money than you earn.
Hmm.
Invest first. That's just the golden rule, in my opinion. But even when you are spending, really understand, are you spending because it gives you joy, or are you spending because everybody else is spending?
Right.
For example, for me, having a car is simply a utility. Many of my colleagues, many of my friends have fancy cars. And in fact, in my office, a lot of my friends have either an Audi or a Lexus, but I drive a Camry, and that to an old one. And but on the other end, I spend on my vacations.
And
Uh,
you spend on coffee.
yes, I spend on coffee. So for me, it's not about, I've somehow I figured out early in life that it doesn't matter what others are doing. What matters is what makes me happy. And whatever makes me happy, that's what I do, irrespective of what others say.
And when you say happy, I just want to elaborate on that. You're not talking about that momentary happiness that you get. I mean, it could be momentary, but it's like a joy that you really get from that experience. Like, if it's just coffee,
Yeah.
the you appreciate the coffee, you appreciate the notes in the coffee, you derive that joy, and for you, that's money you were well spent.
So Charlie Munger talks about a concept which is called invert, right? Most of new immigrants, most of people like us who start from scratch, we're always thinking about, if we had this amount of money, this is how we would live our life, right? That's one way to approach things. But in my opinion, there's another way. And using Charlie's principle, which is inversion, which is like, imagine if you were the king of the world. So now the money constraint is gone. Now what makes you happy? You could spend anywhere you want, you can. And the activities that you can do every day with all the money that you have, and that gives you the most joy, those are the activities at least I spend on. So for example, I drink coffee and fancy coffee, and that gives me joy. So it's not a very big expense, but I figured that, like, I could spend more money drinking a wine somewhere, but I figured that if I had all the money, still I enjoy coffee more.
Right.
So just invert the whole thing, that if you had all the money, now you have a big problem of what gives you really joy, because not everything will give you joy, and you're not in the mode where you're thinking, if I had the money, this is what I would have done.
Is there anything you will suggest to um, the youth who are entering workforces, or kids, let's say kids who are able to just about going to understand finance?
The best advice, not just for kids or people entering finance, but anybody, is, again, if you don't take care of your finances, that they will dictate how you live your life eventually. One. Second, start early. Third, at least I've learned this from a little bit from my own life, but also a lot from, I do yoga, and what I've learned is the real joy is not in constantly trying to do something or achieving something. The real joy is in being able to sit still and being patient.
Enjoy
Uh,
the process.
yeah, and also for kids, like, if they start early, they don't have to be the smartest. They can do things. If you understand compounding and if you invest at very early age over a period of time, just being very normal, just buying good ETFs or investing
So
in good markets, they could be wealthy enough.
so that reminds me of the conversation we were having yesterday, and I would like to leave our viewers with this question that you were asking all the kids yesterday. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, for all the kids or anybody
So we
who's,
want to leave that with a question, like they have to comment with the answer what they think. So
yeah.
yeah.
So maybe the kids especially should do an exercise. Imagine, whatever your age is, like, if you know how to use an Excel, just open up an Excel, or there are many videos, many, you can Google how to do this in an Excel file. So just put your age down there. So let's say if somebody is 15 years, put your age 15 years. And let's say you had $10,000 or $5,000 to invest today, and you bought S&P 500 ETF. So just basic markets or global market ETF. So you're not actually looking for this stock will go up or that. You just basic. And then the question I want to leave them, that if every year they were investing that amount of money as they start earning just 5,000 or $10,000, and that money compounded at 10%, how much wealth would they have when they're 40 years old?
Okay, so everyone, this is the exercise you're going to do. You can decide whatever age. Let's say you're starting at age 15. I mean, you can start at 14 because at 14 years old, you can work. So you're going to invest uh, in an Excel sheet. This is the exercise, and this is for everybody. You're going to invest 5,000 uh, Canadian dollars every year,
Yeah,
and let's say you are investing in S&P 500, which has been historically giving 10% annual return,
yeah, all right.
and you're going to do just 5,000 every single year for next 30 years
Yeah,
or 25 years. You can decide the period, how much money you would have by, and like at the age when you are 40. Let's I would add to that, do the same exercise, but you're starting at age 20 instead of 15, and see how much money you will have at the age of 40, and then do it at age 30, and then see how much money you will have at the age of 40, and then please comment with your answers. And with that, I would like to this session is coming to an end. Thank you, Saket, so much for sharing all the insight and sharing what your profession is. And if anyone is interested, if anyone has any questions for Saket, please put it in the comment. We'll try best to reply. Any parting words, Saket?
No, no, I'm not as wise to give parting comments, and I think this is what I tell my daughter is uh, find out what gives you happiness. That's it. If you just do, we use a lot of mind. If we just do things from heart, life is magical.
Life is magical, everyone. And thank you for listening and being here with us. Thank you, Saket.